You know, Marco Rubio, and I'm bringing up a Republican, Marco Rubio said that Ted Cruz would do anything in the world, say anything, do anything in the world to be elected. And that is absolutely true, let me tell you. But Cruz has got an evil twin, if you want to call her that. Hillary Clinton will say and do anything in order to become president of the United States, and that basically includes lying and disparaging people. She has the nerve to talk about negative campaigning, but when she gets out on a debate stage, she gets as negative as I've ever heard. I'm going to play this clip from the Chris Hayes show, and I'm going to stop it from point in time to make commentary.
Evening from New York, I'm Chris Hayes. As the Democratic primary heads to Nevada and South Carolina, Hillary Clinton seems to have found what she thinks is an effective tool to bludgeon Bernie Sanders in hopes of halting his newfound momentum. Barack Obama. The president remains incredibly popular with Democratic voters more broadly and voters of color specifically, who make up a large portion of the Democratic electorate in the two upcoming states. His approval rating stands at 73% among non-white Americans. And that may have something to do with Clinton's efforts to drive a wedge between President Obama and her opponent, as she did earlier today in Denmark, South Carolina, addressing a largely African-American audience.
He has called the president weak, a disappointment. He tried to get some attention to attract a candidate to actually run against the president when he was running for re-election.
Now that's true, but there were a lot of Democrats that were calling the president weak, okay? And the reason that he was trying to attract someone to run against Obama in 2012 was for someone to push Obama back to the left instead of in the center and leaning right. So it wasn't that he really wanted Obama not to win re-election, but he needed to be pushed to the left, which is progressive. And a lot of people did not have a problem with that. And then when it came down to campaigning for Obama, Bernie Sanders did campaign for Obama. So, you know, her statements about him disparaging the president is total bullshit. You have to look behind the words and to check out the reasons that people do things. Now, apparently, she didn't believe that it was a problem for her to run against Obama in 2008. So which is the greater sin, looking for somebody to run against Obama in a primary or actually running against Obama? You make your own call.
He does not support, the way I do, building on the progress that the president has made.
It's an argument Clinton has made before, but at last night's debate hosted by PBS, the candidate's first face-off since Sanders won New Hampshire by a landslide, Clinton sharpened those attacks.
I understand what President Obama inherited, not only the worst financial crisis, but the antipathy of the Republicans in Congress. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. The kind of criticism that we've heard from Senator Sanders about our president, I expect from Republicans. I do not expect from someone running for the Democratic nomination to succeed President Obama.
Madam Secretary, that is a low blow.
And it was a goddamn low blow. You know, she could have said all of that without throwing in that he's acting like a Republican. She's full of shit. She acts more like a Republican than some Republicans do.
Now, if that's Clinton's winning strategy, she might want to make sure her husband is in the loop. Bill seemed to go a bit off message last night in Tennessee while campaigning for his wife.
She's always making something good happen. She's the best change maker I've ever known. A lot of people say, oh, well, you don't understand. It's different now. It's rigged. Yeah, it's rigged because you don't have a president who's a change maker.
Oh, and who would know what she's thinking about the president better than Bill Clinton?
While Hillary Clinton has landed on a strategy to go after Sanders, Sanders seemed to have finally found a way to talk about foreign policy beyond just his vote against the Iraq War, taking Clinton to task for consulting with Henry Kissinger and making a forceful case against American interventionism around the world.
The point about foreign policy is not just to know that you can overthrow a terrible dictator. It's to understand what happens the day after. And in Libya, for example, the United States, Secretary Clinton as Secretary of State, working with some other countries, did get rid of a terrible dictator named Gaddafi. But what happened is a political vacuum developed. ISIS came in and now occupies significant territory in Libya.
At a Democratic focus group held last night by communications firm Park Street Strategies, Sanders' foreign policy comments seemed to make a favorable impression.
One of the things that I have been on the fence about Bernie is foreign policy. I didn't feel like he made any really clear statements, and everything he said I was behind. I think we have meddled in the politics in the Middle East for far too long, going back decades.
But the last word of the night went to Hillary Clinton, who, in her closing statement, presented what may be her most potent charge against Bernie Sanders.
We agree that we've got to get unaccountable money out of politics. We agree that Wall Street should never be allowed to wreck Main Street again.
If we agree that we need to get unaccounted money out of politics, what the fuck are you doing taking unaccounted money for and using a super PAC? Where the fuck is that money coming from? So no, we don't agree. You're saying that because he's saying that, but you've still taken twice the amount of money that he's raised through super PACs, and that's dark money. So you're full of shit.
Here's the point I want to make tonight. I am not a single issue candidate, and I do not believe we live in a single issue country.
Despite Clinton's strong close, however, this was the scene at that focus group when the debate was all over.
Based on everything you heard and seen, who do you think won the debate? How many would say Senator Sanders? Keep your hands up so I can count.
The whole debate?
The whole debate.
Joining now, Democratic strategist Chris Kofinas, who hosted that focus group last night, Michelle Goldberg, columnist for Slate.com. And Chris, let me start with you, and let's start on this the Obama issue. This was the most we've seen Hillary Clinton really sort of talk about continuing the president's legacy. Last night it was using it sort of more offensively, reciting all the kinds that Sanders has critiqued the president. How did that play with the folks that you were watching the debate with?
It was kind of mixed, to be frank. You know, in the focus group, folks were dialing the entire debate. There were moments where they were dialing it pretty up, because as you said earlier, there is obviously a very strong favorability towards the president. I think the challenge is for Secretary Clinton is if you reinforce it too much, it comes across like you're deflecting from the larger issue or the point of what they're talking about in terms of the question and what you're trying to focus on. So I'm not convinced it's an entirely winning strategy, but here's, I think, the point of what the Clinton campaign is trying to do. They understand that Senator Sanders is not as well known, and in places where, like, in South Carolina, he's got to go out there and introduce himself to an entirely new block of voters. It can be a potentially potent attack if Senator Sanders isn't able to get his message out effectively.
Michelle, I think it's effective insofar as this I think is clearly the case, no matter who you favor. If the most important thing to you when you're deciding your vote is choosing someone who is most like President Obama in their politics, in their ideology, and in their comfort in the institutions as they're currently constituted in American governance, clearly that person is Hillary Clinton.
Right.
But I mean, I don't think even that's a question.
But I guess the question is that actually what voters want?
Right.
I mean, that certainly isn't what voters in Iowa and New Hampshire want. In one of those states, and I can't remember which one, a large number of, I think it was like 48% identified as socialist. Right?
Iowa.
That doesn't really reflect, I think, the Democratic Party at large, but it shows you why with I think that block of voters, a continuity argument, an argument that I'm the person to continue Obama's legacy is not going to be effective, right? I mean, those people feel like the last 8 years, to some extent, have been, if not a disaster, an enormous disappointment, right? And the premise of Bernie Sanders' campaign is that he can do it differently, right? I mean, he sort of seems to ignore, I think, a lot of the structural impediments to that Obama has faced, and basically says we're going to have a revolution and we're going to mobilize enough people that it's going to, I guess, wash all of those impediments away.
Yeah, and one of the major impediments is all the goddamn racists in the Republican Party won't have a black man to try to beat up and to organize against. So now, don't get me wrong, they may not be in love with a Jewish man being in charge, but there's just a special place that they place black people in that just draws even the most reasonable of Republicans to work against.
Chris, I want to play a little bit of the focus group responding at the first hour. I thought it was interesting, and talking a little bit about this sort of Obama pivot. Take a listen.
Everything he's saying is coming from the heart. Everything she's saying is scripted and it's repetitive.
Okay. I think he taps into the frustration that the average, everyday man feels.
A number of times took Obama's side, and Obama did this and Obama did that, and people are furious. Regardless of which side of the aisle they're on, there's a huge bunch of people out there that do not agree that Obama's path has been successful.
Exactly. They just don't think that he was able to go far enough. And Obama, for all of his flowery rhetoric, never really went to the people to try to get the people to push some of these assholes to get stuff done. So this gentleman is absolutely right. A lot of people are upset that he hasn't gone far enough. So Obama has not really been a progressive. And for anybody to say that he has, they're full of shit. Yeah, he did get a few progressive things done, but his need to compromise and with the other side to get things done basically worked against him.
Chris, I continue to sort of puzzle through this in terms of what Democratic voters really in their heart want. I mean, you saw the split voting in New Hampshire happen. 40% said continue Obama's policies, 44% said, more liberal policies. You get a sense of what are they looking for in this race?
They're looking for somehow to merge both Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton.
Right.
To be really frank. I mean, here's what's amazing. So in terms of who won that debate focus group, it was 25-9 Senator Sanders. But when you asked at the end of the group, who was more electable, it was 25-9 Secretary Clinton.
And that's the problem. Bernie's got to overcome the image or illusion that he is less electable than Hillary Clinton. If he can get those people to just change their mindsets to that of him being electable, Hillary Clinton is going to be in a world of fucking trouble.
Here's, I think, some of the enduring conflict that voters have. They love Senator Sanders' message. He speaks to the economic anxiety that voters are feeling all across the country. That, to be honest, too many people in D.C. and New York, let's say some of the elites, underrepresent and definitely underestimate. But they also admire, Secretary Clinton's incredible experience, her knowledge, her command. They see her in the White House, and they're torn. And that's what we're seeing consistently. Folks want to know why this is an increasingly closer election than a year ago any pundit thought. It's because of that message. And I think the challenge for Secretary Clinton is how she pivots to tap that emotion.
You talk about that. That's fascinating, right? Who won the debate 25-9 one way? Who's the most electable 25-9 the other way? You wrote this line. You wrote this piece about sort of how you kind of did not support Hillary Clinton in 2008. You come around to it. It's getting shared all over my Facebook feed. There's this one sentence you say, Bernie Sanders is a mensch whose politics are more or less my own, but I'm convinced he'd be eviscerated in a general election. In part.
And that's what needs to be overcome, because he damn sure will not be eviscerated in a general election if he has the full support of the Democratic Party, because he can pull the independents over to his side of the fence. and depending on who the actual Republican candidate is, I don't think that he would have a major problem. Would it be close? Yeah, I believe it would be close, but I believe that he should be able to pull it out without a tremendous amount of trouble.
What I see in the Democratic electorate right now is a kind of inner confidence about not being a minority of the country. I mean, I remember back in 2004 when everyone was a bunker, it was just get the most electable. And that was always, there was always a sense for a long part of my adult life in politics that Democrats felt like they basically needed to trick the American people into electing a Democratic president because fundamentally it was a conservative country and they were a minority party. What you were seeing, I think, insofar as this race has gone as long as it is that's not operational.
Well, and part of the age divide, I think, is that, you know, people my age and older came of age in a time when Democrats were constantly on the defensive, when they were constantly feeling like they had to triangulate, quite frankly. And one of the reasons I'm a little bit more, I think, able to sympathize with some of Hillary Clinton's history of triangulation is because I remember how besieged liberals were in the 90s. I mean, I remember a time when liberal was a career-killing epithet that no one would want to be associated with. And so when people point out some of the things that the Clintons did to make Democrats electable after 12 years of Republican rule, some of these things that seem indefensible from our vantage point, I remember feeling they felt understandable at the time. Right. And so, but I think if your first kind of political experience was Obama, you know, breaking through everyone's idea of what electability was, and that, you know, of course it seems like, yes, we can.
Yeah, that is a really, really good point about where that sort of generational debate, divide is coming. Chris Kofinas and Michelle Gerber, thank you both.
Yeah, so if Obama was able to break through what electability is, I have no doubt that if people in their hearts really take a look at things, that Bernie Sanders' ability to be elected should be at least equal to Obama's, if not better.